The sound of metal scissors snapping through plastic was louder than I expected. My son-in-law Derek stood in my daughter's kitchen and cut my credit cards into pieces while my daughter Lauren watched in silence. "You're not thinking clearly anymore, Sheryl," he said. "Someone has to take control." I wanted to scream. Instead, I bent down and gathered the broken pieces from the floor. Derek thought he had taken away my freedom that night. He had no idea about the private account I had opened 2 weeks earlier, the one with enough money to protect me and enough evidence to bring his entire plan crashing down. If you've ever felt betrayed by someone you loved, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. And please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below, because sometimes the people closest to us hide the darkest intentions. My name is Sheryl Sandberg. I was 68 years old when Derek cut up my credit cards in my daughter's kitchen, and until that night, I had spent most of my life believing that love meant helping the people you cared about whenever they needed you. I had been widowed for 6 years. My husband Thomas had been gone long enough that people expected me to have moved on, whatever that was supposed to mean. But you do not move on from a 42-year marriage. You learn how to carry the empty spaces. You learn how to sleep on one side of the bed. You learn that a quiet house can sound louder than a crowded room. Thomas and I had lived in the same modest brick home in Columbus, Ohio for nearly 30 years. It was not fancy. The kitchen cabinets were older than my grandson Noah. The hallway carpet had been replaced twice. The backyard had a maple tree that Thomas planted when Lauren was in kindergarten. But it was ours. We had paid off the mortgage years before he passed away. We had lived carefully saved slowly and avoided debt whenever we could. Thomas used to say, "A little money put away isn't about being rich, Sheryl. It's about never having to beg somebody else to treat you with dignity." I did not understand how important those words would become until much later. Before retirement, I worked as an administrative manager for a regional insurance company. It was not glamorous work, but I was good at it. I knew how to organize chaos, how to read the fine print, how to make sure every bill was paid before the due date. I raised Lauren with that same steady kind of care. I packed lunches, attended school plays, worked overtime when necessary, and taught her that independence was something no one could take from her unless she handed it away. Lauren had always been my whole heart. She was 39 now, with chestnut brown hair she usually wore in a loose ponytail, and the same thoughtful eyes Thomas had. She worked as a patient coordinator at a dental clinic outside Columbus. She had a kind nature, too kind sometimes. She was the sort of person who apologized when someone bumped into her at the grocery store. When she married Derek Mitchell, I was genuinely happy for her. At first, Derek seemed like the kind of man a mother hoped her daughter would find. He was confident, polite, and charming without appearing arrogant. He worked in car sales then, and he had a way of making everyone feel important when he spoke to them. He remembered birthdays. He brought flowers to family dinners. He called me Mom after their wedding, and I admit I liked hearing it. He and Lauren gave me Noah 2 years later. The first time I held that little boy wrapped in a blue blanket with a full head of dark curls, I felt something in me soften that I had not realized had hardened after Thomas died. Noah brought laughter back into my house. He spilled juice on my carpet, left toy cars under my couch, and asked questions that made no sense at all. "Grandma, he once asked me, do fish get thirsty?" I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. I loved that child with everything I had, and because I loved him, I wanted to help his parents whenever they struggled. At first, the requests were small. Lauren called me one winter afternoon, her voice thin and shaky. Derek's car had broken down on the way home from work, and the repair shop wanted more than they could afford. I did not hesitate. I transferred the money that same evening. A few months later, Noah needed dental work that insurance did not fully cover. Again, I helped. Then there was the security deposit when they moved into a larger apartment, the new tires Derek said they needed before winter, the unexpected electric bill, the preschool registration fee, a medical copay, a broken washing machine. Every time the request came wrapped in urgency, and every time Derek made sure I understood that I was not just helping them, I was saving them. "You have no idea what a difference this makes, Mom," he would say, placing a hand over his heart. "Lauren has been so stressed. You're keeping this family afloat." At first, those words made me feel useful. After Thomas died, I had spent years trying not to become one of those lonely older women people spoke about with pity. I did not want to be a burden. I did not want anyone to think I was sitting alone in my house waiting for a phone call. So when Derek told me I was needed, I believed him. The truth is, I wanted to believe him. Lauren never directly asked for much. That was part of what made it harder. She would call and say things like, "Mom, please don't feel like you have to help," while Derek's voice hovered somewhere in the background. Then a few minutes later, he would take the phone. "Sheryl, I hate even bringing this up," he would say, sounding embarrassed. "But we're in a tight spot this month." I always told myself it was temporary. Everyone goes through hard times. I knew that. Thomas and I had gone through hard times too. There were years when we stretched every dollar. Years when we skipped vacations and ate leftovers for 3 days because Lauren needed braces or the furnace stopped working. But we never expected someone else to rescue us. And we certainly never made our problems feel like someone else's responsibility. By the time Noah turned 7, I had helped Lauren and Derek more times than I could count. I told myself I did not mind because I had enough. My pension covered my expenses. The house was paid off. I had savings. And I had money from Thomas's life insurance that I had barely touched. Still, there were moments when something about Derek's stories did not sit right. He would say he had lost a sale at work, then mention a new golf outing with friends the following weekend. He would tell me the rent was overdue, then show up wearing a watch I had never seen before. He would say the family was barely getting by, but Noah would casually mention that his father had taken him to a professional baseball game. Whenever I asked questions, Derek had an answer ready. The tickets were from a client. The watch was a gift. My buddy covered the golf. He always smiled when he explained, always patient, always just a little offended that I had asked. And Lauren would look at me with that worried expression of hers, as though I was causing a problem by wanting to understand where my money was going. That was when I started swallowing my doubts. I told myself I was being suspicious because I was older, because I was lonely, because grief had made me cautious. But the truth was simpler. Something inside me was trying to warn me. The first time Derek suggested helping with my own finances, I was standing in my kitchen sorting through the mail. He had come by to pick up Noah after school, and Lauren was working late. He noticed the stack of envelopes beside my coffee maker. "You still do everything on paper?" he asked, laughing lightly. "I like paper," I said. "Paper doesn't suddenly disappear because someone forgot a password." He smiled as though I had made a charming little joke. "You know, Mom, you should have let me help you get organized. There are so many scams targeting seniors now. I could set up your bills online, look over your accounts, make sure no one takes advantage of you." For 1 second, I almost said yes. He had offered it so smoothly, so kindly. But something about the way he looked at the mail bothered me. His eyes were not concerned. They were interested. I placed my hand over the envelopes. "I've managed my money for a long time, Derek," I said. "I think I can manage a little while longer." His smile stayed in place, but it changed. It became thinner. "Of course," he said. "I'm just trying to help." At the time, I thought that was the end of it. I did not realize it was the beginning. After that afternoon, Derek's help began appearing in places where I had never asked for it. At first, it was subtle enough that I could have convinced myself I was imagining things. He would stop by my house on his way home from work and ask whether I had checked my bank balance lately. He would glance at the grocery bags on my kitchen counter and make comments about prices. "Those strawberries are nearly $6 now," he said one afternoon, lifting a carton from the counter. "You've got to watch those little expenses, Mom. They add up." I looked at him puzzled. "I can afford strawberries, Derek." He laughed as though I had misunderstood him. "I know you can. I'm just saying when people get older, they don't always notice how quickly money leaves the account." It was such a strange thing to say that I did not know how to respond. For most of my adult life, I had tracked every expense in a small blue ledger. Even after I started using online banking, I still wrote down major purchases. I knew exactly what came in every month from my pension, what left for utilities, insurance, groceries, and taxes. I had never missed a payment. I had never bounced a check. I had never needed anyone to explain the cost of strawberries to me. Still, Derek kept finding ways to make small comments. When I bought Noah a new winter coat, he said I was spoiling him. When I mentioned replacing my old dishwasher, he asked whether I had compared financing options. When I told Lauren I was thinking about taking a weekend bus trip with 2 women from church, Derek said I should be careful about unnecessary spending at this stage of life. At first, Lauren would simply roll her eyes. "Derek worries too much," she would say. But slowly even she began repeating his words. "Mom, Maybe you should slow down on big purchases. Mom, it might be good to let Derek look over things. Mom, you know he just wants to make sure you're okay." That was the part that hurt the most. Not Derek's opinions, not even his questions. It was hearing my own daughter say them as though they made sense. One Sunday afternoon, Lauren and Noah came over for lunch. I had made chicken pot pie, the kind with a buttery crust that Noah always asked for. He sat at my table swinging his little legs under the chair while telling me about a science project involving planets. Lauren looked tired. There were dark circles beneath her eyes, and she barely touched her food. "Are you all right?" I asked. She gave me a quick smile. "Just busy. Busy at the clinic and at home." She lowered her voice after that, checking toward the living room where Noah was playing with his toy cars. "Derek's been stressed. Sales have been slow. He's trying to figure out some things." I knew what that meant. A few minutes later, Derek came in through my back door without knocking. He had his usual easy smile, but his eyes moved quickly around the kitchen. "Smells good in here," he said. He kissed Lauren on the cheek, then reached over and ruffled Noah's hair. For a few minutes, he acted like the perfect husband and father. He asked Noah about school. He complimented my cooking. He even carried the empty dishes to the sink. Then he noticed the pile of mail beside my toaster. I had not opened it yet. There were utility bills, a magazine, a notice from the pharmacy, and a thick white envelope with the return address of my bank. Derek reached toward it. I moved faster than I expected. My hand covered the envelope before his fingers touched it. He looked at me. "You don't have to guard it from me," he said with a laugh. "I wasn't guarding it," I replied. "I just haven't opened it yet." His smile stayed there, but I felt the room change. Lauren looked between us. "Mom," she said softly, "Derek is only trying to help." I turned to her. "Help with what?" "With your paperwork. You get so much mail. Maybe he could help you go through it." I stared at my daughter for a moment. "Lauren, I have been opening my own mail since before you were born." She looked embarrassed, but Derek stepped in quickly. "No one is saying you can't," he said. "We just care about you." The words sounded gentle, but the way he said them made me feel as though I had failed some invisible test. I changed the subject because Noah was there. I asked him about his science project and watched him light up as he talked about Saturn's rings. But after that day, I began paying attention. I started noticing how often Derek asked questions about my accounts. He knew the name of my bank. He knew when my property taxes were due. He knew I had an automatic payment for my homeowner's insurance. He even knew that I had recently moved some money from a savings account into a certificate of deposit. I had never told him that. At first, I tried to explain it away. Maybe Lauren had mentioned something. Maybe he had seen a statement while visiting. Maybe I had spoken without remembering. But the questions kept coming, and each one was more specific than the last. Then, one Tuesday morning, I found something that made my stomach drop. I had been waiting for an important letter from the bank. It was confirmation that my CD had renewed at a new rate. I knew it should have arrived the previous week, but it had not shown up. I called the bank to make sure nothing had gone wrong. The woman on the phone checked my account and said the letter had been mailed on time. It should have arrived several days ago, she told me. I thanked her and hung up. For the rest of the afternoon, I searched through the mail basket, the recycling bin, the stack of papers near the printer, and even the small drawer where I kept stamps. Nothing. I told myself I must have misplaced it. Then Derek came by around 6 that evening. He said he was in the neighborhood and wanted to drop off Noah's backpack, which had been left in his truck. I let him in. He walked through my kitchen like he always did, opening the refrigerator without asking and taking out a bottle of water. While he drank, I noticed something white sticking out of the side pocket of his jacket. It was an envelope. For a second, I could not see the address. Then he shifted slightly, and I saw the logo. My bank's logo. The same blue and gold logo printed on every statement I had received for years. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it. "Derek," I said quietly. He turned toward me. What I pointed at his jacket pocket. "What's that?" He looked down. For just a fraction of a second, his face changed. Then he pulled the envelope out and smiled. "Oh, this. It must have gotten mixed in with my mail." He held it out to me. My name was printed across the front. Not his. Mine. The envelope had already been opened. I could see the jagged tear along the top. I stood there looking at it, unable to speak. Derek's smile faded into something more serious. "Sheryl," he said, lowering his voice. I opened it because I thought it might be something urgent. "You live alone. What if it was fraud? What if someone was trying to take advantage of you?" I finally found my voice. "You opened my bank mail. I was trying to protect you." "No," I said. "You were snooping." His eyes narrowed. For the first time, there was no charm in his expression. "Don't make this into something it isn't." I felt my hands shake. "You had no right." He stepped closer, not aggressively, but close enough that I could smell the sharp, expensive cologne he always wore. "You're getting emotional," he said. "That's exactly why Lauren worries." Those words hit me like a slap, not because they were loud, because they were calm, because they sounded practiced. I looked down at the opened envelope in my hand, then back at him, and in that moment, I understood something I had been too afraid to admit. Derek was not trying to help me manage my life. He was trying to learn how to take it over. For the next few days, I kept that opened bank envelope on my kitchen table. I did not throw it away. I did not file it. I left it there beneath the small glass bowl where I kept peppermints, because every time I saw the torn flap, I needed to remember what Derek had done. Not what he claimed he had done, what he had actually done. He had opened my private mail without permission. Then he had stood in my kitchen and told me I was too emotional to understand why he had done it. I wanted to call Lauren that same night. I wanted to tell her every word. I wanted to hear my daughter say, "Mom, that is not okay. I'm sorry, I'll talk to him." But I was afraid of what she might say instead. I had begun to understand that Derek's influence over Lauren did not look like shouting or threats. It looked like concern. It looked like him standing behind her at family gatherings with one hand on her shoulder. It looked like him finishing her sentences. It looked like Lauren pausing before she spoke, as though she were checking whether her own thoughts were allowed out. So I stayed quiet, at least for a little while. Then, 3 days after he opened my mail, Lauren called me at 8:17 on a Thursday night. I remember the time because I was sitting in my recliner with a blanket over my knees, watching an old detective show that I was not really paying attention to. The phone rang, and I saw her name on the screen. The moment I answered, I knew something was wrong. "Mom." Her voice was tight and breathless. "Lauren, what happened?" She did not answer right away. I could hear movement in the background. A cabinet closing, a child laughing somewhere farther away. Then I heard Derek's voice, low and distant, though I could not make out the words. "Mom," she said again, quieter this time. "I hate asking you this." My stomach tightened. "What do you need?" She exhaled shakily. "Derek's truck is having problems. The mechanic says the transmission is damaged. He needs it for work, and we don't have enough to cover the repair." For a few seconds I said nothing. I had heard a version of that sentence so many times that I could almost predict what came next. They were short this month. It was unexpected. They would pay me back. They had nowhere else to turn. And because Noah was involved, because my daughter sounded exhausted, because I still loved her enough to put her needs above my own doubts, I felt myself begin to soften. How much I asked. Lauren hesitated. 3,800. I nearly dropped the phone. That much. "The transmission is completely gone. Has Derek gotten another estimate? He said this is the best one." Of course he did. I looked toward the envelope still sitting on the kitchen table. The torn flap stared back at me from across the room. "Lauren," I said carefully, "I need to think about it." There was silence. Then her voice cracked. "I understand." That was what broke me. Not anger, not pressure, her sadness. I could picture her standing in that apartment, worried about rent, worried about Noah, worried about the man she had married. I could picture her trying to keep everything together while Derek stood nearby, pretending to be ashamed. "I'll call you in the morning," I said. "Okay." Before we hung up, she whispered, "Thank you for always being there." I barely slept that night. I kept reminding myself that helping family was not wrong. I told myself I could not punish Lauren for Derek's behavior. I told myself that maybe the truck really was broken. Maybe the transmission really did cost that much. Maybe I was letting one opened envelope turn me into a suspicious old woman. By morning, I had talked myself into sending the money. I went to my bank and transferred it directly into Lauren's checking account, not Derek's. I made sure of that. Then I called her. "It's done," I said. For a second, she did not speak. Then she started crying. "Mom, I don't know what we would do without you." I closed my eyes. "You're my daughter," I said. "I love you." Later that afternoon, Derek sent me a text. "Thank you. You saved us again. I won't forget this." I stared at those words for a long time. Something about them made me uncomfortable. Not because they sounded grateful, because they sounded possessive, like he was keeping score. The next few weeks passed in a blur of similar emergencies. Noah needed money for a school field trip. Their electric bill had doubled because of a billing error. Lauren had to miss work after catching the flu, and they were behind on groceries. Derek claimed a customer had backed out of a major sale at the last minute, leaving him without the commission he had been counting on. Every problem seemed to arrive at once. Every problem had a price. And every time I hesitated, Derek had a way of reminding me what was at stake. "Mom, we don't want Noah to feel the stress. Mom, Lauren has been crying all day. Mom, this is just a temporary setback. He never said give us money. He was too clever for that. Instead, he made me feel that if I did not help, I was choosing to let my daughter suffer. So I helped, again and again. I withdrew from savings. I delayed replacing the dishwasher that had been leaking under my sink. I canceled the little weekend trip to Amish country I had been planning with 2 friends from church. I told them I was not feeling well. The truth was, I felt foolish. I had spent my whole life believing I knew the difference between generosity and being used, but by then I was no longer sure. Then, on a Saturday morning in early spring, I ran into someone who gave me a reason to doubt everything. I was at the grocery store comparing prices on coffee when I heard someone call my name. Mrs. Sandberg. I turned and saw a woman in a bright yellow jacket standing near the produce section. It took me a moment to place her. Then I remembered. She was one of Lauren's neighbors from the old apartment building. Her name was Tina. She had come to Noah's birthday party the year before with her daughter. "Tina," I said. "How are you?" "Good," she said, smiling. "I haven't seen you in forever." We made small talk for a minute. She asked about Noah. I asked about her daughter. Then she said something so casually that I almost missed it. "I saw Derek last weekend at the country club." I looked at her. "The country club?" "Yeah," she said. "My brother works there. He said Derek's been coming around a lot lately, golfing with some guys." I felt a coldness slide through me. "Maybe you saw someone else," I said. Tina shook her head. "No, definitely Derek. He was showing off this dark blue pickup truck. Nice one, too. For a moment, the grocery store seemed too bright, too loud." I stood there with my hand resting on a bag of coffee beans, unable to move. "Dark blue pickup," I asked slowly. "Yeah, lifted a little. Big tires, looked expensive." I tried to smile. "Oh, maybe he got a deal." Tina laughed. "Well, if he did tell him to find me one, my car is falling apart." I said goodbye a few minutes later, but I barely remember leaving the store. All the way home, I kept hearing Lauren's voice in my mind. "The transmission is completely gone. 3,800. We don't have enough." And then Tina's voice. He was showing off this dark blue pickup truck. When I got home, I sat in my car for nearly 15 minutes without turning off the engine. I did not want to believe it. I did not want to be the mother who suspected her own son-in-law of lying. I did not want to imagine that the money I had sent for a repair had gone toward a truck golf outings or anything else Derek had not earned honestly. But something had shifted inside me. The doubts I had been swallowing for months no longer felt like doubts. They felt like facts waiting to be uncovered. That evening, Derek called. His voice was cheerful. "Hey, Mom, just wanted to check in." I held the phone tighter. "How's the truck?" I asked. There was a pause, a very small pause, but I heard it. "It's fine," he said. "Why, I was just wondering if the repair worked out." "Yeah, they fixed it." "That's good." Another pause. Then he laughed lightly. "You sound strange. Everything okay?" I looked through my living room window at the darkening street outside. "Yes," I said. "Everything is fine." But it wasn't. Not anymore, because for the first time, I was no longer asking whether Derek was taking advantage of me. I was asking how much he had already taken. I did not confront Derek right away. That may sound weak to some people. For years, I would have thought the same thing. I had always believed that when something felt wrong, you looked the person in the eye and asked for the truth. But there was a difference between asking for the truth and giving a dishonest person time to prepare another lie. So I waited. For 3 days I watched. I watched Derek's social media posts, though I rarely used Facebook myself. Lauren had once helped me set up an account so I could see Noah's school pictures. Derek had his profile set mostly private, but one of his friends had posted photos from a golf course. There he was, in the background of one picture holding a drink and laughing beside 2 men in polo shirts. And behind him, parked near the clubhouse, was a dark blue pickup truck with oversized tires. The same kind Tina had described. I felt sick. I zoomed in on the image until it became blurry. I was not trying to catch him in some grand crime. I was only trying to understand whether I had been lied to. But the more I looked, the clearer it became. The truck did not look repaired. It looked new to him. Clean, shiny, proudly displayed. The next morning, I drove to Lauren's apartment without calling first. I told myself I was going there to bring Noah the cookies I had baked the night before. That was partly true, but I also knew I needed to see the truck with my own eyes. When I pulled into the parking lot, I saw it immediately. Dark blue, lifted slightly, big tires, chrome trim catching the sunlight. Derek's truck. It sat in the spot nearest their building. I parked across from it and stared through my windshield. I had paid nearly $4,000 to repair a vehicle that had somehow turned into something newer, bigger, and more expensive. The cookies sat on the passenger seat beside me, still warm in their container. For a moment, I wanted to march upstairs and demand an explanation. I wanted to knock on the door until Derek opened it and look at Lauren while I asked whether she knew. But then I saw Noah's little backpack by the front door through the glass entrance, and I stopped. Noah did not deserve to watch his grandmother turn his home into a battlefield, so I went upstairs, smiled when Lauren opened the door and handed Noah the cookies. Derek was in the living room. He stood when he saw me, surprised for half a second, before his usual grin appeared. "Mom," he said, "you should have called." "I was nearby," I replied. He glanced toward the window. "Did you see the truck?" I looked directly at him. I did. His smile widened. "Got a good deal. A customer was desperate to sell it. I couldn't pass it up." I folded my hands in front of me. "I thought your old truck had a damaged transmission." His face changed. "Not much, but enough." Lauren looked up from the kitchen counter. "What do you mean?" she asked. Derek answered quickly. "The old truck was going to cost too much to fix," he said, "so I traded it in. It made more sense." "With what money?" I asked. The room went quiet. Noah was sitting on the floor with his cookies humming to himself as he lined up toy cars. He did not look up. Derek's jaw tightened. "Mom," Lauren said softly, "we're figuring things out." "I'm sure you are," I said. "But I sent you $3,800 because I was told the truck needed repairs." Derek crossed his arms. "And we used that money to solve the truck problem." "That wasn't what you told me. You're focusing on wording." "No," I said. "I'm focusing on honesty." Lauren stepped between us without even realizing she was doing it. "Mom, please. Derek has been under a lot of stress." I looked at her, and my heart hurt. "Lauren, this is not about stress. This is about money I gave you because I believed your family was in trouble." Derek gave a humorless laugh. "Wow. So now helping your daughter comes with an audit." That sentence cut deeper than it should have, because that was exactly what he wanted to make me feel ashamed for asking questions. I looked at him for a long moment. "No," I said quietly. "Helping my daughter comes with trust." Then I turned to Lauren. "I need you to understand something. I will always love you. I will always love Noah. But I can't keep writing checks without knowing what they're for." Lauren's eyes filled with tears. "I never asked you to," she whispered. I knew that was not entirely true, but I also knew where the words had come from. Derek turned toward her. "See," he said. "This is what I mean. Your mom thinks I'm some kind of criminal because I'm trying to support my family." I watched Lauren's face change. She looked torn, guilty, tired. And before I could say anything else, she said the words that hurt me most. "Mom, maybe you should stop assuming the worst." I felt as if someone had opened a window in the middle of winter. The room suddenly seemed cold. I nodded once. "You're right," I said. "Maybe I should." Then I left. I drove home in silence, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles ached. When I got inside, I placed my purse on the kitchen table and stood there staring at the torn bank envelope I had never put away. For years I had thought being a good mother meant making things easier for my child. But that day I began to wonder whether I had made it too easy for Derek to hide behind Lauren. 2 nights later, Derek called me. His voice was friendly again, almost overly warm. "Mom, I've been thinking about our conversation." "I have too," I said. "I don't want there to be tension between us." "Neither do I." "Good," he said. "Then maybe we can fix this the right way." I waited. "I think it would help if we all sat down with someone at your bank," he continued, "just to get everything organized. Make sure you're protected. So no one misunderstands anything." My stomach tightened. What exactly needs to be organized? Your accounts, your bills, your plans for the future. You live alone, Sheryl. It would be responsible to have someone you trust involved. Someone you trust. He said it as though he had earned that title. "I manage my finances just fine," I replied. "Of course you do," he said quickly. "But there are legal things, estate things, emergency things. God forbid something happens and Lauren has no idea what to do." There it was, the word he wanted me to fear. Emergency. He was trying to make me imagine myself helpless. "I'll think about it," I said. He went quiet for a moment. Then his voice hardened just slightly. "You really should, because people get taken advantage of every day, especially when they don't have family helping them." I almost laughed. He said it like a warning. The next morning, Lauren called. "Mom, Derek made an appointment at your bank for Friday," she said. "He said you agreed." I did not agree. There was a pause. "He said you were open to it. I said I would think about it." Lauren sighed. "Mom, can you please just come? It would mean a lot to me." I closed my eyes. I wanted to refuse, but I also wanted to see what Derek was trying to do. "Fine," I said. "I'll come." Friday arrived gray and rainy. Derek picked me up in his blue truck, even though I had told him I could drive myself. He insisted. "It's safer," he said. The drive to the bank was only 15 minutes, but it felt much longer. Derek kept talking about practical things, power of attorney, automatic payments, fraud protection. He used calm, sensible words. But beneath every sentence I heard the same message. You are old. You are alone. You are losing control. When we arrived, he walked beside me through the lobby as though I needed guidance. At a small desk near the back, a young bank representative greeted us. Derek introduced himself before I could say anything. "I'm her son-in-law," he said. "I've been helping her manage some things." The representative smiled politely and placed several documents in front of me. Derek leaned close. "These are simple," he said. "Just paperwork so Lauren can help if anything happens." I looked down at the pages. The print was small. The language was dense. I saw phrases like authorized access account administration, beneficiary review, and financial authority. My chest tightened. "Can I take these home and read them?" I asked. Derek's hand rested on the edge of the table. "There's no need to overcomplicate it, Mom. I said I want to read them." The representative looked at me, then at Derek. For the first time, I noticed something in her expression. Concern. She leaned slightly closer to me and spoke in a calm, professional tone. "Mrs. Sandberg, you are absolutely welcome to review these on your own. In fact, I recommend that you do." Derek's face went still. The representative continued. "If you would like, you can come back another day without anyone else present. We can explain each document carefully." For 1 second, no one spoke. Then Derek stood up. "We'll do that," he said flatly. Outside, rain hit the pavement in hard, cold drops. Derek did not say a word as he drove me home. But when he finally pulled into my driveway, he looked at me with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said. I opened the truck door. "No, Derek," I replied. "I think I'm finally making it exactly as hard as it needs to be." The next Monday, I went back to the bank alone. I did not tell Lauren. I certainly did not tell Derek. For the first time in months, I put on my coat, picked up my purse, and left my house without feeling as though I had to explain where I was going. It was a small thing, but it felt important. The rain from Friday had passed, leaving the morning cold and bright. I drove myself to the bank and parked in the far corner of the lot where the sun hit the windshield just enough to warm my hands before I went inside. Carol Bennett was waiting for me. She was not the young representative from Friday. Carol was older, maybe in her late 50s, with silver blonde hair cut neatly at her chin and the calm, steady voice of someone who had spent years helping people through difficult moments. "Mrs. Sandberg," she said as I approached. "I'm Carol. I'm glad you came back." I nodded, suddenly embarrassed. "I feel foolish," I admitted. "I should have asked more questions sooner." Carol led me into a small office with glass walls and closed the door behind us. "You are not foolish," she said. "You are being careful. There's a difference." That sentence nearly brought tears to my eyes. For months, Derek had made me feel unreasonable for asking questions. Too emotional, too suspicious, too difficult. Carol made me feel sane. She placed a folder on the desk between us. "I reviewed the documents your son-in-law wanted you to sign," she said. "They would not have given him complete ownership of your accounts, but they would have given Lauren broad access, and depending on how they were used, that could have allowed someone else to influence or direct your finances." "Someone else," I said quietly. Carol looked at me carefully. "You mentioned your son-in-law was very involved in the appointment. He is. And you did not ask him to be no." She folded her hands. "Has he ever pressured you to share passwords, account details, or financial statements?" I hesitated. Then I told her everything. I told her about the opened envelope, the questions about my spending, the way Derek knew details I had never shared, the money requests, the truck, the golf course photograph, the way Lauren repeated his words as though they were her own. Carol listened without interrupting. When I finished, she let out a slow breath. "Mrs. Sandberg, I can't tell you what your family's intentions are," she said, "but I can tell you that you have the right to protect yourself." Protect yourself. The phrase sounded almost dramatic when she said it. I had always imagined danger as something obvious, a stranger in a dark parking lot, a phone scammer, a burglar forcing a lock. I had never imagined danger could come wearing a nice shirt calling me Mom and bringing flowers to Thanksgiving dinner. "What should I do?" I asked. Carol opened the folder. "First, I would recommend changing access information connected to your accounts. Passwords, contact details, alert settings. Anything that could be seen or influenced by someone else." I nodded. "Second, you may want to consider separating some of your funds into a private account that only you control." My eyes lifted. "A private account?" "Yes," she said. "One that is not linked to the same online profile, the same email alerts, or the same paperwork you keep at home. Something simple and secure, only in your name." For a moment, I thought of Thomas. A little money put away isn't about being rich, Sheryl. It's about never having to beg somebody else to treat you with dignity. I had not touched most of Thomas's life insurance money since he died. Part of it was grief. I could not bear to think of it as money. It felt like the last piece of him turned into numbers on a statement. So I left it alone. I told myself it was for emergencies. But now I understood that emergencies did not always arrive with sirens. Sometimes they arrived smiling. "I want to do that," I said. Carol nodded. "All right, we can take care of it today." We spent the next hour going through everything carefully. I changed my online banking password. I removed the old recovery email Derek had once helped me set up on my tablet. I added a new email address that only I used. I asked for paper statements to be sent to a secure post office box instead of my house. It felt strange making these changes. Every step felt like a quiet admission that I no longer trusted the people closest to me. But each time Carol asked whether I was sure I heard Derek's voice in my head. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." And I thought maybe I was. Maybe that was exactly the point. When it came time to open the separate account, Carol explained the options. It would be in my name only. No shared access, no joint holder, no automatic notifications to anyone else. The account would not appear in the same online dashboard as my main checking and savings accounts. "Who knows about it?" I asked. "Only you," Carol said. "And the bank." My throat tightened. "Only me." That was a sentence I had not heard in a long time. I transferred a portion of the life insurance money into the new account. Not everything. I was not trying to disappear. I was not trying to punish Lauren. I was trying to make sure that if Derek ever got his hands on my primary accounts, I would still have enough to stand on, enough to pay my bills, enough to hire help, enough to make my own decisions, enough to survive whatever came next. When the paperwork was finished, Carol placed a small envelope in front of me. Inside was a temporary debit card and a sheet with instructions. I stared at it for a moment. It looked like an ordinary piece of plastic, but to me, it felt like a door locking from the inside. Carol lowered her voice. "Do you have anyone you trust who is not connected to this situation?" I thought of my church friend Marlene, but I had not told her anything yet. I thought of my cousin in Indiana, but we had not been close in years. "I'm not sure I admitted." Carol nodded gently. "Then for now, keep this information private. Don't leave it where someone can find it, and if anyone pressures you, come back here or speak to an attorney." An attorney? That word made the situation feel more real than I wanted it to be. "I don't want this to become ugly," I said. Carol looked at me with a sadness I recognized. "Sometimes people think protecting themselves is what makes things ugly," she said. "But usually the ugliness was already there. Protecting yourself just makes it visible." I carried that sentence with me all the way home. When I walked into my kitchen, the house was quiet. The torn bank envelope was still on the table. For a long time I stood there looking at it. Then I picked it up, carried it to the trash, and dropped it in. Not because I had forgiven Derek, because I was done letting that envelope scare me. That evening, Derek called. His name lit up on my phone. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail. Then I answered. "Hello, Derek." "Hey, Mom," he said warmly. Too warmly. "Just checking in. You seemed upset after the bank." "I'm fine." "You sure?" "Yes." There was a pause. Then he said, "Lauren's worried about you." I looked out the window at my maple tree. Its branches were bare, but tiny buds had started to form near the ends. "Lauren should talk to me herself if she's worried," I said. His voice shifted. "Sheryl, nobody is against you here." That was the first time he had used my name without Mom. It landed differently. "I'm glad to hear that," I said. "You know I only want what's best for you." I almost laughed, but I did not. "Then you should be happy I'm taking care of my finances." Silence. A longer silence this time. Then Derek said, "Of course. I just hope you're not doing something impulsive." I tightened my grip on the phone. "I've been managing my money for more than 40 years, I said. "Nothing I do will be impulsive." His breath came out sharply. "All right," he said. "We'll talk soon." When the call ended, I sat down at the kitchen table. For the first time, I did not feel afraid of what Derek might be planning. I felt afraid of how far he was willing to go. But beneath that fear, something else had begun to grow. Not confidence. Not yet. Something quieter. Something stronger. The knowledge that he believed I was alone, and he had no idea I had already started building a way out. After I opened the private account, I stopped reacting the way Derek expected me to. That was not because I suddenly became fearless. I was still frightened. I was frightened every time my phone rang and his name appeared. I was frightened when Lauren sounded distant. I was frightened that one wrong word could push my daughter even farther away from me. But I had learned something important at the bank. Derek depended on my confusion. He depended on my guilt. He depended on me believing that keeping the peace mattered more than protecting myself. So I decided to become quiet. Not weak. Quiet. For the next few weeks, whenever Derek asked questions about my money, I gave him less than before. "How are your bills going?" he asked one afternoon. "Fine. Did you ever look into simplifying your accounts?" "I handled it. Are you still using that old savings account? I have things under control." At first he tried to laugh it off. He would smile and say, "You don't have to be secretive, Mom." But I noticed the way his eyes changed every time I refused to give details. He was not offended. He was frustrated. That told me more than any confession ever could. Around that same time, Derek began bringing up my house more often. My home had never been a source of conflict before. It was simply the place where family dinners happened, the place Noah built blanket forts in the living room, the place where Lauren had grown up. But suddenly Derek talked about it as though it were a problem waiting to happen. "You know, Mom, that staircase is steep," he said one evening while standing in my hallway. "What if you fall? I've been using those stairs for 30 years. Exactly. 30 years. The place is getting old. A few days later, he pointed out that my backyard was hard to maintain. Then he mentioned property taxes. Then he commented that the furnace was probably expensive to replace. At first, I answered politely. Then I started writing things down. I bought a small notebook with a brown cover and kept it in the drawer beside my bed. Every time Derek said something strange, I recorded the date, the time, and the exact words I could remember. March 12th. Derek asked whether I had considered selling the house, said it was too much responsibility for someone alone. March 15th. Derek asked if I had a will, asked where I kept it. March 18th. Derek said Lauren would need clarity if something happened to me. The more I wrote, the worse it looked. He was not simply trying to manage my bank account, he was mapping out my entire life. One Sunday, Lauren and Noah came over for lunch without Derek. I had hoped it might be a chance for us to talk honestly, but Lauren seemed nervous from the moment she walked in. She kept checking her phone. She barely touched the vegetable soup I made. Noah was in the den watching cartoons, so I finally asked Honey, "Are you all right?" She looked up quickly. "I'm fine. You don't seem fine." She looked down at her hands. "It's just been stressful lately. With Derek." Her shoulders stiffened. "Mom, please. I'm not trying to start anything." "Yes, you are," she said quietly. "You keep looking for problems." That hurt, but I kept my voice calm. "I'm looking because things don't make sense." Lauren's face tightened. "Derek says you've been acting different." I felt my stomach drop. "Different how?" "He said you're suspicious, that you forget conversations and then accuse him of things." For a moment, I could not speak. The room became very still. I thought about the opened bank envelope, the truck, the pressure at the bank, the way he had told me I was emotional. Now he was telling Lauren I was forgetful. He was building a story about me. A story where he was the concerned son-in-law and I was the confused older woman who could no longer be trusted. "Lauren," I said carefully, "has Derek ever said I have memory problems?" She hesitated. That hesitation was enough. "He thinks you've been overwhelmed," she said. "That wasn't my question." She looked away. "He said you've been repeating things lately." I felt something inside me break, not loudly, not dramatically, but like thin glass cracking under pressure. My own daughter was sitting in my kitchen repeating Derek's version of me. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to list every lie he had told. I wanted to tell her about the bank account, the mail, the truck. But I remembered Carol's words, "Protecting yourself just makes the ugliness visible." And I knew if I pushed too hard, Lauren might run straight back to Derek and tell him everything. So I took a breath. "Do you think I'm losing my memory?" I asked. Lauren's eyes filled with tears. "No." The word came out fast. Too fast. Then she whispered, "I don't know." That was worse. I looked toward the den where Noah laughed at something on television. Then I looked back at my daughter. "You don't have to answer right now," I said. "But I need you to remember something. I am still your mother. I am still the person who raised you. I am still capable of making my own choices." Lauren rubbed her hands together. "I know that. Do you?" She did not answer. After she left that afternoon, I sat alone at the kitchen table for almost an hour. I did not cry at first. I just stared at the empty chair where Lauren had been sitting. Then the tears came, not because Derek had insulted me. I could survive that. I cried because he had found a way to place doubt between my daughter and me, and doubt is dangerous. It grows quietly. It does not need proof. It only needs space. That night, I went into my bedroom and opened the brown notebook. I wrote down everything Lauren had said. Then I wrote something else. "Derek is trying to make Lauren believe I cannot manage my own life." The sentence looked harsh on paper. But once I saw it written down, I could not pretend anymore. 2 days later, I received a call from a woman named Megan Foster. She introduced herself as a real estate agent. "I'm sorry to bother you, Mrs. Sandberg," she said brightly. "I was told you might be considering selling your home." I nearly dropped the phone. "I'm not considering selling my home." There was a pause. "Oh, I may have misunderstood. Who told you that?" Another pause. Then she said, "A gentleman named Derek Mitchell contacted me. He said he was helping you make some decisions about downsizing." My hand went cold around the phone. "He is not authorized to make decisions for me." "I understand," Megan said quickly. "I'm sorry. I won't contact you again." After we hung up, I stood in my kitchen shaking. Derek had moved beyond questions, beyond comments, beyond pressure. He was speaking to strangers as though he had authority over me. I called Carol at the bank first. She told me to keep documenting everything. Then I called David Brooks, the attorney Carol had recommended. His office was small and quiet above a pharmacy near downtown Columbus. When I walked in 2 days later, I felt like I had crossed a line I never wanted to cross. Families were supposed to talk things out. Families were not supposed to need lawyers. But David was kind. He listened without making me feel foolish. He read through my notes. He looked at the documents Derek had tried to make me sign. He asked careful questions. Then he leaned back in his chair. "Mrs. Sandberg," he said, "your son-in-law appears to be creating a pattern." "What kind of pattern?" "A pattern that could make others believe you are incapable of managing your own affairs." The words made my mouth go dry. What does that mean? It means he may be preparing to push for more control over your finances, perhaps even over decisions involving your home. I looked down at my hands. What can I do? David's voice was calm. "You protect yourself before he gets any farther." I thought about Derek's smile, his concern, his careful words. Then I thought about the private account no one knew about, and for the first time I understood that it was not just a safety net. It was proof that I had seen him coming. A week after my meeting with David Brooks, Lauren came to my house without calling first. I knew something was wrong before I even opened the door. She stood on my porch with her purse clutched against her chest, her face pale and drawn. Her hair was pulled back carelessly, and she looked as though she had not slept in days. Behind her, Derek sat in the passenger seat of his truck at the curb. He did not get out. He did not wave. He just watched. "Can I come in?" Lauren asked. "Of course," I said. She stepped inside, and I closed the door behind her. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The house smelled like coffee and lemon cleaner. Noah was at school, which made the silence feel even heavier. Lauren walked into the living room and sat on the edge of the couch. I took the armchair across from her. "What happened?" I asked gently. She looked down at her hands. "Derek says we need to talk." I felt my stomach tighten. "About what?" "About you." There was something about the way she said it that made my chest ache. I waited. Lauren swallowed hard. "He thinks you're making decisions too quickly. He thinks you're getting overwhelmed and shutting people out." I said nothing. She continued, her voice trembling. "He says you've been hiding things. Your bank visits, talking to lawyers, changing passwords. He says that isn't normal." I looked at her carefully. "Did he tell you how he knows about any of that?" Her eyes flickered toward the window, toward Derek's truck outside. "No. Lauren, I'm allowed to go to my bank. I'm allowed to speak to a lawyer. I'm allowed to change my passwords." "I know," she said quickly. "I know you are. Then why are we having this conversation?" Her face crumpled a little. "Because he says he's scared something is wrong." I leaned back slowly. "Something wrong with me?" Lauren nodded. "He thinks you're forgetting things. He says you've been repeating stories. He says you're getting angry over misunderstandings." For a few seconds I could not breathe. I had known Derek was trying to shape the story. I had written it in my notebook. I had heard it from Lauren before. But hearing it again, this time spoken like a diagnosis, felt different. It felt like a trap closing. "Lauren," I said quietly, "do you believe him?" She looked away. "I don't know what to believe anymore." That answer hurt more than if she had said yes. I had raised her. I had held her when she had nightmares. I had worked extra shifts so she could take piano lessons and go to college. I had sat beside her hospital bed when she had Noah crying because I was so proud of her. And now, because Derek had repeated a story enough times, she was looking at me like I might be a stranger. I kept my voice calm. "Did Derek tell you he opened my bank mail?" Lauren frowned. "What? Did he tell you he took an envelope with my name on it? Opened it and said it was because I might be too confused to understand it?" Her eyes widened. "No. Did he tell you he brought documents to the bank and pressured me to sign them? He said he wanted you to have help. Did he tell you what the documents actually said?" Lauren's face went pale. I did not answer for her. I could see the thoughts moving behind her eyes. That was when I understood something terrible. Derek had not just lied to her. He had edited reality for her. He had removed every detail that made him look dangerous and left behind only the pieces that made me look unstable. Lauren pressed her fingers to her temple. "Mom, I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight either." "Then please," she whispered, "can you just give Derek access for a while? Just temporary. Let him help with the accounts until everyone feels better." The room went silent. I looked at my daughter. Not the little girl she used to be, not the young woman who had once called me every Sunday afternoon to tell me about her week. I looked at a tired woman who had been taught to confuse control with care. "No," I said. Lauren's eyes filled with tears. "Mom." "No," I repeated more gently. "I will not hand over my cards, my passwords, my accounts, or my decisions to Derek. He's trying to protect you. No, Lauren, he is trying to control me." She stood up abruptly. "You don't know that. I know enough. He says you've become paranoid. He says that because he wants you to doubt me." Lauren looked toward the front window again. Derek was still in the truck. His silhouette was dark behind the windshield. I could feel him waiting for her to return with an answer, waiting for her to report every word I said. I wanted to beg her not to go back out there. I wanted to tell her everything David had told me. I wanted to bring out the notebook, the printed documents, the notes from Carol, but I also knew I could not force her to see the truth before she was ready. So I said the only thing I could. "I love you, and I will always be here for you, but I will not give up my independence to make Derek comfortable." Her mouth trembled. "He says you're ruining our family." I felt tears burn behind my eyes. "Families are not ruined by questions," I said. "They are ruined by lies." Lauren stared at me for a long moment. Then she grabbed her purse. "I need to go." I nodded. "Okay." She walked toward the door, but before she opened it, she turned back. For a second, I thought she might come to me. I thought she might say she was sorry. I thought she might finally ask me what was really happening. Instead, she whispered, "I wish you would stop making this so hard." Then she left. The door closed behind her. I stood in the hallway listening to the sound of her footsteps fading down the porch steps. A car door opened, closed. The truck engine started. Then they were gone. I did not move for several minutes. The house felt colder than usual. I walked into the kitchen, filled the kettle, and put it on the stove, even though I did not want tea. I think I just needed something ordinary to do with my hands. While I waited for the water to boil, my phone buzzed on the counter. A message. I looked down. It was from Derek. For one moment, I assumed he had written something polite for Lauren to see. Then I opened it. "She's almost ready to sign." My breath caught. There was no greeting, no explanation, no name. He had clearly sent it to the wrong person. I read the message again. "She's almost ready to sign. Not Lauren, not Sheryl, just she." But I knew exactly what he meant. He still believed he could pressure me into signing something. He still believed Lauren would become the tool that finally wore me down. My hands began to shake. I took a screenshot, then another. I forwarded it to my new private email address. After that, I sent it to David Brooks. His reply came less than 10 minutes later. "Do not respond to Derek. Save everything. We need to meet." I stared at those words. "We need to meet." For the first time, I understood that I was no longer dealing with uncomfortable family tension. I was dealing with a man who had a plan, and somehow I was standing in the middle of it. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with the brown notebook open in front of me. I wrote down everything. Lauren's visit, Derek's accusations, his demand for my passwords, the text message. Then I added one more line at the bottom of the page. "He thinks I will eventually give in." I stared at the sentence for a long time. Then I underlined it. Because Derek had made one mistake. He thought being kind meant I was weak. He thought being quiet meant I was afraid. He thought I was too old, too lonely, too emotional, and too dependent on my daughter to fight back. But he did not know about the private account. He did not know about Carol. He did not know about David. And he did not know that the moment he sent that message, I stopped waiting for my family to believe me. I started preparing to prove it. David Brooks's office was above a pharmacy on Broad Street, tucked between a tax service and a small shop that sold orthopedic shoes. It was not the kind of place anyone would notice from the sidewalk. That was probably why I liked it. There were no marble floors, no intimidating receptionist in a glass tower, just a narrow staircase, a waiting room with 2 soft chairs, and a framed watercolor of downtown Columbus hanging crookedly on the wall. I arrived 10 minutes early. My purse felt heavier than usual because it held more than lipstick tissues and my reading glasses. Inside were copies of the bank documents Derek had tried to rush me into signing, the screenshot of his message, my brown notebook, and a folder Carol had helped me organize. I had become a woman with evidence. I hated that. But I was beginning to understand that evidence was sometimes the only thing that could speak when people had already decided not to listen. David came out of his office and greeted me with the same quiet professionalism he had shown the first time. "Mrs. Sandberg," he said, "come in." I sat across from his desk while he reviewed the message Derek had sent. "She's almost ready to sign." David read it once, then again. "Do you know who he intended to send this to?" he asked. "No," I said, "but I know he wasn't talking about a birthday card." He gave a small, humorless nod. "No, I don't think he was." He placed the phone down carefully and opened my notebook. As he read through my notes, I watched his face. He did not look shocked. That worried me more than if he had. He saw a pattern. He had probably seen it before. Finally, he leaned back in his chair. "Sheryl, I want to be direct with you," he said. I nodded. "Derek appears to be laying groundwork to make you seem incapable of handling your own finances. The comments about memory problems, the pressure to sign broad financial documents, the contact with a real estate agent, and this text message all point in the same direction." My mouth went dry. "What direction?" "Control." The word landed heavily between us. David continued. "He may be hoping that if enough people believe you are confused or vulnerable, Lauren will persuade you to give him access voluntarily. If that fails, he may try to create the appearance that you need someone else to manage your affairs." I folded my hands together to stop them from shaking. "Can he do that?" "Not easily," David said. "Not if you are alert, documented, and willing to act now." That was the first moment I felt a sliver of relief. Not safety, not yet, but a path. David pulled a legal pad closer. "We need to take steps before he does." He explained them one by one. First, I needed updated estate documents, a will, a durable power of attorney, and healthcare directives that named people I truly trusted. Second, I needed to make sure no one could claim I had been pressured into signing anything later. Third, I needed to limit what Derek could access through my home mail, my devices, and my public records. Fourth, I needed to keep every message, every note, every bank document, every request for money. "Do I have to tell Lauren?" I asked. David paused. "No," he said. "Not until you are ready. Right now, you are protecting yourself. You are not punishing her." I looked down at my hands. That distinction mattered more than I expected. For months, Derek had made every boundary sound like betrayal. If I asked questions, I was selfish. If I wanted privacy, I was paranoid. If I refused to sign papers, I was hurting Lauren. But David did not make me feel cruel. He made me feel responsible. Then he opened a new folder and slid a printed page toward me. "There's something else," he said. "What is it?" I had my assistant run a basic background search on Derek. Nothing improper. Public records only. I stared at the paper. There were several entries. One involved a civil lawsuit in Kentucky from years earlier. Another listed a collection action in Indiana. There was also a lien connected to an auto finance company. My eyes moved across the page slowly. "I don't understand," I whispered. David pointed to a line. "Derek had a significant unpaid debt several years ago. According to the records, it was tied to a credit account opened using another person's address." "Whose address?" "That part isn't completely clear," David said, "but the records suggest it may have been connected to a relative." I looked up sharply. "A relative?" "Yes." The room seemed smaller. I thought of Lauren's tired face, her hesitation, the way she had said she did not know what to believe. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means this may not be the first time Derek has used someone close to him as financial cover." I felt cold all over. For a long time I had been thinking of Derek as a man who had gotten desperate, a man who had lost work, made bad choices, and leaned too heavily on family. But this was different. This was a pattern, and patterns did not happen by accident. David continued speaking, but for a moment I barely heard him. I was remembering every time Derek had looked grateful after taking my money, every time he had called me Mom, every time he had told me I was saving the family. He had not been asking for help. He had been testing how far he could go. When I left David's office that afternoon, I did not go straight home. I drove to a small diner near the river where Thomas and I used to eat breakfast after his doctor appointments. The booths were cracked red vinyl, and the coffee tasted burned, but I liked it because no one there knew me as the woman whose family was falling apart. I sat alone by the window and ordered soup I barely touched. Across the street, people hurried through the cold afternoon. A mother pulled a child in a red coat across the crosswalk. An older man stood outside a hardware store shaking snow from his boots. Ordinary life continued. And I was sitting there, trying to understand how mine had become so complicated. My phone buzzed. It was Lauren. For a moment, I just looked at her name. Then I answered. "Hi, honey." "Mom," she said. Her voice was quiet. "Are you busy?" "No. I'm out having lunch." There was a pause. "Were you at the lawyer again?" My stomach tightened. "How did you know that?" Another pause. Then she said, "Derek saw your car near the building." "Of course he did." I closed my eyes. "Lauren, why is Derek watching where I go?" "He isn't watching you," she said quickly. "He just happened to be nearby. That seems to happen often. Mom, please don't do this." I could hear the strain in her voice, the fear, the exhaustion, and underneath it, something else. Guilt. "Lauren," I said softly, "I need you to answer one question honestly." She was silent. "Do you have access to your own bank account?" Her breath caught. "What can you log in whenever you want?" "Yes. Do you know how much money is in it right now?" There was a longer silence this time. Then she said, "Derek handles most of that." I gripped the edge of the table. "Lauren, he's better with numbers than I am. Has he ever stopped you from looking?" "No," she said too quickly. I said nothing. Finally, she whispered, "Sometimes he says there's no point because he already takes care of everything." My heart sank. I looked out the diner window, but I could not see anything clearly anymore. Derek was not only controlling me, he had been controlling her too. "Lauren," I said carefully, "I want you to listen to me. You are not bad with numbers. You are not incapable. You are not lucky that someone else is willing to handle your life for you." She did not answer. I could hear faint traffic in the background. Then she said, "You always make him sound like a monster." "No," I said. "I am telling you what he does." Her voice broke. "I have to go." "Lauren." But she had already hung up. I sat there with the phone in my hand. The waitress came by and asked whether I wanted a refill. I nodded even though I had not touched the first cup. As she poured, I looked down at the dark coffee spreading inside the mug. I knew I could not save Lauren by force. I could not drag her away from Derek. I could not make her see something she had spent years learning to deny. But I could protect myself. And maybe if I did it carefully enough, I could protect her when she was finally ready to see the truth. That night, I called Carol and asked her to help me change one more thing. I removed Lauren as the emergency contact on my main accounts. Not because I stopped loving her, because Derek had access to her life in ways I did not fully understand. Then I called David and told him I wanted to move forward with every protection he recommended. The next morning, I signed paperwork that gave me more control over my future than I had felt in months. As I left his office, David handed me a sealed envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "A copy of your new legal documents," he said. "Keep it somewhere safe." I held it tightly. For years, I had thought security was something that came from family, a husband, a daughter, a son-in-law who called you mom. But standing there on that cold Ohio sidewalk, I finally understood something Thomas had known all along. Security was not who promised to take care of you. It was making sure no one could take your choices away. Derek invited me to dinner 3 days later. The message came at 10:42 in the morning. "Lauren would love for you to come over Friday night. Just family. Let's put all this tension behind us." I read it twice. Then I placed my phone face down on the kitchen table. For the first few minutes, I felt something close to hope. Maybe Lauren had finally questioned him. Maybe she had seen enough of the cracks to want a peaceful conversation. Maybe this was not another trap, but an opening. Then I remembered Derek's text. "She's almost ready to sign." I remembered David's warning. He is building a pattern. And I remembered the way Derek had watched me through the windshield while Lauren came into my house to ask for my passwords. So I called David before I answered. "Do you think I should go?" I asked. He was quiet for a moment. "If you feel safe enough, yes," he said. "But do not sign anything. Do not hand over any cards, passwords, documents, or access codes. Keep your phone with you. And if the conversation turns manipulative, leave. Do you think it will? Yes, he said plainly. I appreciated that he did not pretend otherwise. By Friday evening, I had changed clothes 3 times. God. That may seem silly, but I did not want to look frail. I did not want to look angry either. I finally settled on dark slacks, a cream blouse, and a navy cardigan that Thomas had once said made my eyes look brighter. Before leaving, I opened the drawer beside my bed and checked that the brown notebook was still there. Then I checked the envelope containing my private account information. Safe, hidden, untouched. I drove myself to Lauren and Derek's apartment. When I pulled into the parking lot, I saw Derek's dark blue truck in the same spot near the entrance. It looked polished under the streetlights as though it had never been part of a lie. For a moment I stayed in my car. I watched people coming and going from the building, a woman carrying groceries, a man walking a small dog, a child tugging at his mother's sleeve. Ordinary people, ordinary evenings. I wondered how many families were sitting behind those windows pretending nothing was wrong. Then I took a breath and went inside. Lauren opened the door before I knocked. She was dressed nicely, but her face looked tired. Her smile appeared for a second and disappeared just as quickly. "Hi, Mom. Hi, sweetheart." She hugged me, but it was not the warm hug I remembered from years ago. Her arms were stiff, almost cautious. Derek appeared behind her. "Mom," he said brightly. "I'm glad you came." I looked at him. I almost didn't. His smile froze for half a second. Then he stepped aside. "Come in." The apartment smelled like roast chicken and rosemary. Noah was sitting at the dining table coloring on a sheet of paper. When he saw me, his whole face lit up. "Grandma?" He ran toward me, and I bent down to hug him. For one brief moment, my heart softened. "Hi, sweetheart," I said. "What are you drawing a dinosaur house?" "A dinosaur house?" "Yeah, it has a garage." "Of course it does." He grinned. Derek laughed from behind me. "Everything has a garage with this kid." I glanced at him. I wonder where he gets that from. The room went quiet. Lauren looked down. Derek's smile changed again. But Noah did not notice. He went back to the table, humming softly to himself as he colored. Dinner began politely. Too politely. Derek poured sparkling water into glasses. Lauren passed the potatoes. Noah told us about a boy in his class who had gotten in trouble for putting glue on his chair. I listened, smiled, even laughed at the right moments, but I could feel the tension under every word. Derek kept watching me, not openly, but often enough that I noticed. When I reached for the salt, his eyes followed my hand. When I paused to think before answering one of Noah's questions, he glanced at Lauren. When I said I had been busy that week, he asked busy with what just errands I said. What kind of errands I looked up. The kind adults take care of. Lauren shifted in her seat. Derek smiled as if he had not heard the warning in my voice. After dinner, Noah went into the living room to watch a cartoon. I could hear the cheerful sounds of a children's show drifting from the television. That was when Derek placed a folder on the table. It was thick, neatly organized. Too neatly organized. Lauren stared at it without touching it. My stomach tightened. Derek rested his hand on top of the folder. "Mom," he said, using the soft voice he always used before asking for something, "we've been thinking a lot about your future." I said nothing. "We love you," he continued, "and we want to make sure you're protected." There it was again, protected. That word had become his favorite weapon. Lauren looked at me, then down at her lap. Derek opened the folder and slid several pages toward me. "These are simple documents," he said, "just something to make things easier if there's ever an emergency." I looked at the first page. Financial power of attorney. My chest tightened. I turned to the second page. Authorization for account access. The third, property management authorization. I looked up slowly. "You want control of my bank accounts and my house." Derek leaned back in his chair. "That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" "It's a safety plan." "For whom?" His eyes narrowed slightly. "Sheryl, don't make this dramatic." I felt something inside me go still. For months he had called me emotional, suspicious, confused, difficult. Now he was trying to make me feel dramatic for reading the words on the page. I picked up one document and held it between my fingers. This gives someone the ability to act on my behalf financially, only if necessary. And who decides what is necessary? Derek's smile disappeared. Lauren finally spoke. "Mom, it's just in case something happens." I turned to her. "Something like what?" She looked startled. "I don't know. A fall? An illness? Anything." "And if nothing happens," Derek answered before she could, "then it just sits there." I placed the paper back on the table. "No." The word came out calm, clear. Derek blinked. "No," he repeated. "No," I said again. "I am not signing these." His jaw tightened. "Mom, you haven't even read them. I have read enough. You don't understand the legal language. I understand my own name." He leaned forward. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're getting defensive over something that is meant to help you." I looked at Lauren. Her eyes were glossy with tears. "Lauren," I said softly, "did you read these documents?" She did not answer. "Did you?" Her fingers twisted together in her lap. "No," she whispered. Derek turned sharply toward her. "Lauren, but I had already heard enough. You asked my daughter to convince me to sign documents she did not understand," I said. "That's not fair," he snapped. "No," I replied. "What is unfair is making her carry your pressure." For a few seconds nobody spoke. Then Derek stood up. He walked to the kitchen counter and came back holding a pair of heavy black scissors. My heart began to pound. I knew what he was going to do before he did it. He reached into the folder and pulled out my credit cards. I had not noticed when he had taken them. Maybe when I hung my coat by the door. Maybe when I set my purse down beside the chair. He held them up between two fingers. "You don't need these right now," he said. "Give them back. You keep saying you're fine, but you won't let anyone help you. Give them back, Derek." Lauren stood abruptly. "Derek, stop." But he ignored her. He placed the first card between the blades of the scissors. The snap was sharp, louder than it should have been. Noah looked up from the living room. Dad Derek did not stop. He cut the second card, then the third. Plastic pieces fell onto the kitchen tile. I could not breathe. It was not about the cards. I knew I could replace them. It was about the message. He wanted me to feel powerless. He wanted Lauren to see that he could take something from me and call it protection. He wanted to humiliate me until I gave in. "Derek," I said quietly, "you have no right." He looked at me with a coldness I had never seen him show so openly. "I have every right to protect my family." I stood slowly. My knees felt weak, but my voice did not. "I am not your family to control." Lauren covered her mouth with one hand. For the first time I saw fear in her eyes. Not fear of me, fear of him. Derek looked at her, then back at me. "You're making a scene." I almost laughed. He had just cut up my credit cards in front of my grandson, and he was accusing me of making a scene. I bent down and picked up the broken pieces from the floor. One by one, I placed them in my palm. Derek watched me, waiting for tears, waiting for yelling, waiting for me to beg. But I did none of those things. I stood, picked up my purse, and looked directly at him. "You think you've taken something from me?" I said. His expression hardened. "But you have no idea what you just did." Then I turned to Lauren. She was crying silently. I wanted to hold her. I wanted to ask her to come with me. But Noah was standing in the doorway watching us with frightened eyes. So I only said, "I love you." Then I walked out. The cold air hit my face hard as I stepped into the parking lot. My hands were shaking so badly that I dropped my keys once before I could unlock the car. I sat behind the wheel and stared at the broken cards in my palm. Derek thought he had trapped me. He thought cutting plastic had cut off my choices. But as I drove away, I thought about the private account. The account he did not know existed. The account that could pay every bill he thought he had taken control of. And more importantly, the account that gave me the freedom to stop being afraid of him. The first thing I did when I got home was lock the door. I stood in my dark entryway with my purse hanging from one shoulder and the pieces of my credit cards clenched in my hand. For a moment I could not move. The house was silent. Noah's frightened little voice kept replaying in my head. "Dad." Then Derek's voice. "I have every right to protect my family." I had heard men say cruel things before. Not often, thankfully. But I had heard them. Angry men in grocery store parking lots. Men on television. Men who thought speaking louder meant they were right. What terrified me about Derek was not that he shouted. It was that he sounded so sure of himself. I walked into the kitchen, turned on the light, and placed the broken cards on the table. They looked ridiculous there. Small, jagged pieces of plastic, a blue corner, a silver strip, half my name. I stared at them until my vision blurred. Then I started to cry. Not the kind of crying where you sob into your hands. I did not have the strength for that. The tears just came quietly sliding down my face while I stood alone in the kitchen I had shared with Thomas for decades. I cried because Lauren had watched. I cried because Noah had watched. And I cried because for one terrible moment, Derek had made me feel exactly the way he wanted me to feel. Old, alone, powerless. But after a few minutes, I wiped my face with the sleeve of my cardigan and reached for my phone. I did not call Lauren. I knew she was still inside that apartment, probably trying to explain away something she had just seen with her own eyes. I knew Derek would be nearby, talking fast, making excuses, telling her I had forced him to act. Instead, I called Carol. She answered on the third ring. Sheryl. Her voice was calm but alert. "I'm sorry to call so late," I said. "You don't need to apologize. Are you safe?" The question nearly broke me again. "Yes," I said. "I'm home." "What happened?" I looked at the broken cards on the table. My son-in-law cut up my credit cards. There was silence for half a second. Then Carol's voice sharpened. "Did he take them from you?" "Yes." "Did he have permission?" "No." "Did he threaten you?" "Not exactly." "Sheryl," she said gently, "you do not have to decide tonight what word to use for it. But what he did was not normal, and it was not acceptable." I sat down at the table. "He said he was protecting the family." Carol let out a quiet breath. "People who want to control someone often use that word." I looked at the private debit card hidden inside the drawer beside the stove. For the first time since I had opened the account, I understood why Carol had encouraged me to do it. "I need to know something," I said. "Can I still access the money in my private account?" "Yes," she said. "Only you can access it." Those words settled something inside me. "Only you." "I need to replace my cards," I said. "We can arrange that," Carol replied. "Tomorrow morning, come in early. We'll close the old cards, review your accounts, and make sure no one else has access." I swallowed. What if Derek already knows more than I think? Then we will make sure he knows less by tomorrow afternoon. That was the first time I almost smiled. After I hung up, I called David. He answered quickly, as if he had been expecting something. "Mrs. Sandberg." "Derek cut up my credit cards tonight." David was quiet for a moment. "Was Lauren there?" "Yes." "Was your grandson there?" "Yes." His tone changed. "Are you safe now? I'm home." "Good. I want you to write down everything that happened while it is fresh. Every word you remember. The time, who was present, what Derek said, what Lauren said, what you said. I already have my notebook. Use it," he said, "and save any messages from tonight. Do not argue with Derek by text. If he contacts you, keep it brief." I looked toward the window. The street outside was dark, empty, except for the reflection of my kitchen light. "What do you think he'll do next?" I asked. David did not soften his answer. "He may try to convince Lauren that you were unstable. He may tell her you overreacted. He may try to isolate you further. But he also made a mistake tonight. What mistake he acted in front of witnesses?" I thought of Lauren's face. I thought of Noah standing in the doorway. "He scared Noah," I whispered. "Yes," David said, "and Lauren saw that." After I ended the call, I opened the brown notebook. My hand shook as I wrote. Friday, 7:46 p.m. Derek placed financial documents in front of me. I refused to sign. He took my credit cards from my purse and cut them with black scissors. Lauren told him to stop. Noah saw it. Derek said he had every right to protect his family. I paused. Then I added another line. I told him I was not his family to control. I read it back twice. For the first time that night, I felt something other than fear, anger. Not wild anger, not the kind that makes you say things you regret. This was cleaner than that. It was the anger of realizing someone had mistaken your kindness for permission. The next morning, I woke before dawn. I had barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Derek's hand squeezing the scissors shut. By 8:15, I was dressed and driving to the bank. Carol met me at the side entrance and brought me straight into her office. She had already prepared a list of everything we needed to review. We closed the accounts connected to the cards Derek had destroyed. We changed the passwords again. We removed old contact information. We turned on extra alerts for account activity. Carol also helped me open a new checking account connected only to my private funds. It will give you a clean place to operate from, she explained. Bills, groceries, whatever you need. I nodded. What about the old account? We'll keep it open for now, but we'll monitor it carefully. I want to see whether anyone tries to access it or ask questions about it. Her words made me uneasy. You think Derek might... I think someone who is used to control may become careless when they feel it slipping. By noon, I had a new debit card, a new account number, and a small stack of paperwork that I tucked deep inside my purse. When I got home, I called the utility company, the pharmacy, and my homeowner's insurance provider. I changed the payment methods and contact details. It took hours, but with each phone call, I felt a little steadier. Derek had cut up my cards. He had not cut off my ability to think. He had not cut off my ability to act. Around 3 that afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Derek. You embarrassed yourself last night. Lauren is devastated. You need to apologize before this gets worse. I stared at the screen. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. For a second, I wanted to type everything I felt. You stole my mail. You lied about money. You pressured me to sign away control. You cut my cards in front of my grandson. But David had told me not to argue, so I replied with one sentence. I will communicate with Lauren directly when she is ready. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Then another message. You are proving exactly why we're worried about you. I did not answer. 10 minutes later, he sent a third. You are making everyone think you are confused and unstable. That one made my stomach turn, because it was too deliberate, too clear. He was not just insulting me. He was creating a record. I took screenshots. I forwarded them to my private email. Then I sent them to David. His reply came quickly. Good. Keep doing exactly that. Do not engage further. The rest of the afternoon, I sat in my living room with the curtains open. I did not want to hide. I did not want to spend another day wondering whether Derek was coming for my money, my home, or my relationship with my daughter. I wanted to know what he had already done. So I began going through old documents. I pulled out copies of every check I had written to Lauren and Derek. I printed bank transfers. I made a list of every emergency they had described. Truck repair, rent, Noah's school fee, medical bill, electric bill, groceries. I added the dates and amounts. The total made my breath catch. Over the last 2 years, I had given them more than $30,000. $30,000. I sat back in my chair and covered my mouth. I had told myself I was helping family, but I had been financing Derek's lies. Then I found something else. A letter from a lender had arrived months earlier addressed to Lauren. I remembered seeing it in the mail pile, but not opening it because it was not mine. At the time, Derek had stopped by later that day and said he would take it to Lauren. I had thought nothing of it. Now I searched through my old phone messages. There it was. A text from Derek from 6 months earlier. Got Lauren's financial letter. I'll explain it to her. Don't worry her until I know what it is. My heart began to race. Why would he be handling Lauren's financial mail? Why would he tell me not to worry her? I called David's office. His assistant answered. Can you ask Mr. Brooks to call me when he can, I said. I think I found something. Less than 20 minutes later, David called back. I read him the text. He went quiet. Then he asked, Do you still have the letter? I don't think so. Look for any photocopy reference number, anything. I spent the next hour searching. Finally, in an old file folder marked Medical Receipts, I found a blurry photograph I had taken months earlier because I had meant to remind Lauren to call the lender. The letter was about a personal loan. The name was Lauren Mitchell, and the amount was far larger than I expected. I sat there staring at it. My daughter had debt I never knew about. Debt Derek had apparently been hiding from her. That was when the whole picture began to change. Derek was not only trying to take control of my finances, he was using Lauren's life as collateral too. And for the first time, I realized that saving myself might not be enough. I had to find a way to show Lauren the truth before he buried her under it. I asked Lauren to meet me at a coffee shop the following Tuesday. Not at my house, not at her apartment. Not anywhere Derek could walk in, take over the conversation, or make her feel like she had to choose a side before she had even heard the truth. I chose a small place near the public library, the kind with mismatched chairs and soft music playing low in the background. Lauren used to take me there years ago before Noah was born when she wanted to talk about work or complain about a difficult patient at the clinic. She replied to my message almost an hour later. "Okay, 30 minutes. That's all I can do." I read those words and felt a strange mixture of relief and grief. 30 minutes. That was all my own daughter could give me now. Still, I arrived early. I sat near the back window with 2 cups of coffee in front of me, one black for me, and one with oat milk for Lauren. I remembered how she used to laugh at my plain coffee, saying I drank it like a tired grandfather. When she came in, she looked around nervously before walking toward me. She was wearing her work scrubs beneath a long gray coat. Her shoulders were tense, and her phone was already in her hand. "Hi," she said. "Hi, honey." She sat down but did not touch the coffee. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she looked at me and said, "Derek knows I'm here." The sentence was quiet, but it hit hard. I tried not to react. "He does?" He asked where I was going. I told him I was meeting you. "And what did he say?" Lauren looked down. "He said to be careful. He said you might try to confuse me." I felt something tighten in my chest. "I'm not here to confuse you," I said. "I'm here because I love you." She nodded, but her eyes were guarded. "Mom, I can't do another fight. I don't want to fight either." "Then why did you ask me to meet?" I opened my purse and placed a manila folder on the table. Lauren stared at it. "What is that things I think you need to see?" Her face went pale. "Is this about Derek again? It is about your life." She looked toward the door as if she might leave. So I reached across the table, not to grab her hand, not to force her to stay, just enough to let her know I was there. "Lauren," I said softly, "please, give me 10 minutes. If you still want to leave after that, I won't stop you." She hesitated. Then she nodded once. I opened the folder. The first thing I placed in front of her was the screenshot of Derek's message. "She's almost ready to sign." Lauren stared at it. "What is this?" "He sent it to me by mistake." Her eyes moved across the screen again. Who was he talking about? I believe he meant me. She looked up sharply. "No, he wouldn't." "Then explain it to me." She did not answer. I placed the second document in front of her. It was a copy of the financial authority papers Derek had tried to make me sign at dinner. Lauren read the heading slowly. Financial power of attorney. Her fingers began to tremble. "Derek said it was just emergency paperwork. It would have given someone broad authority over my money. But not him," she said quickly. "It was supposed to be me." "Yes," I said, "but he was the one pushing it. He was the one rushing me. He was the one who knew what the papers said." Lauren shook her head. "He said he was trying to help. He says that about everything." The words came out more sharply than I intended. Lauren flinched. I took a breath. "I'm sorry. I'm not trying to attack you. I'm trying to show you what has been happening." I slid over a printed list. It showed every payment I had made to them during the last 2 years. Truck repair, rent, school fee, insurance, groceries, medical expense, emergency bill. Lauren stared at the total at the bottom. $31,460. Her lips parted. "I didn't know it was that much." "I didn't either until I added it all up." "Derek said you offered." "Sometimes I did," I said, "because I thought you were struggling. But many times I was told you had no choice." She looked at the list again. Then she whispered, "I knew about some of these." "Not all." Her silence answered me. I watched her face change slowly as she read each line. Some payments were things she remembered. Others clearly surprised her. "The truck repair," she said finally. "He told me you helped because you wanted to." "I did want to help, but he told me the money was for a transmission." Lauren's eyes filled with tears. "He said the truck was a good deal. He said he traded the old one in." "I know." Her voice cracked. "So he used your money?" "Yes." She pressed a hand to her mouth. For a moment, I thought she might stand up and leave. Instead, she whispered, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I stared at her. The question hurt because I had asked myself the same thing many times. "I tried," I said. "But every time I brought something up, Derek made it sound like I was accusing him. And every time you looked at me like I was the one causing pain." Lauren's tears began to fall. "I didn't know she said. I swear, Mom, I didn't know. I believe she did not know everything. But I also knew she had ignored things she did know. That was what control did to people. It taught them to look away before they had to face the truth. I reached into my purse again. "This is the part I need you to see most." I placed the photo of the lender letter in front of her. Lauren looked down. At first she did not understand what she was reading. Then her face froze. "What is this?" "It came to your name months ago." "That's not possible." "It's a personal loan, Lauren." She picked up the paper with shaking hands. "I never took out a loan." "I know." Her eyes moved over the details, the amount, the interest rate, her name, her address, her signature. "I didn't sign this," she whispered. The coffee shop sounds seemed to fade around us. The grinder behind the counter, the soft music, the clink of cups, everything disappeared under the sound of Lauren breathing too fast. "Derek told me there was some kind of payment issue last year," she said. "He said he handled it." I did not speak. She looked at me terrified. "He said it was a billing mistake. Did he ever show you the paperwork?" "No." "Do you have access to your own credit reports?" She swallowed. "I thought I did. I have an app. But Derek has the password saved on his phone." The words sat between us. And suddenly Lauren seemed to understand what she had just said. Her face crumpled. "He has all my passwords," she whispered. I leaned forward. "Does he have access to your bank account?" She nodded slowly. "Your email?" Another nod. "Your phone?" "I don't know." That was the moment I stopped seeing my daughter as someone who had betrayed me. I saw her as someone who had been trapped beside me, just in a different room. The anger I had carried for months did not disappear, but it changed. It became grief. Lauren wiped her face with the sleeve of her coat. "I thought he was just better at things," she said. "Money, bills, planning. He always said I was too stressed, too emotional, too scattered." My heart broke, because those were the same words he had used on me. "He says that because it makes you doubt yourself," I said. Lauren looked down at the folder. "He told me you were getting confused." "I know. He said you were hiding money from us because you didn't trust us." I took a breath. "I did open a private account." Her eyes lifted. "You did?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I was scared." The truth of that sentence made us both go quiet. "I wasn't trying to punish you," I said. "I was trying to make sure I could survive if he took control of the accounts he knew about." Lauren stared at me for a long time. Then quietly she said, "He cut up your cards." "Yes." I watched him do it. "Yes." Her face twisted with shame. "I should have stopped him." "You told him to stop." "But I didn't make him stop." "No," I said gently. "You didn't." She cried harder then. I let her. I did not rush to comfort her, because sometimes people have to feel the weight of what they have allowed before they can understand what must change. After a few minutes, she wiped her face and looked at the loan letter again. "What do I do?" she asked. It was the first time she had asked me that. Not Derek, not anyone else. Me. I looked at her and felt something in my chest loosen. "We start by finding out everything I said. Then you decide what you want to do. Will you help me?" "Yes," I said immediately. "Always." She picked up her coffee, but it had gone cold. For the rest of our 30 minutes, we made a plan. Not a dramatic plan, not a revenge plan, a careful one. Lauren would not confront Derek that night. She would go home, act normal, and bring me her old phone the next day. Derek had used it before he got his current phone, and she believed it might still contain messages or financial information he had forgotten about. She would also check whether she could reset her own passwords from a work computer, and she would meet with David Brooks. When she stood to leave, she looked frightened, but she also looked different. Not free, not yet, but awake. At the door, she turned back. "Mom." "Yes, I'm sorry I didn't believe you." I wanted to say that sorry was not enough. Part of me still wanted to. But I looked at my daughter's face and saw the little girl who had once crawled into my bed during thunderstorms. So I stood and held out my arms. She stepped into them. And for the first time in months, she held me back. The next afternoon, Lauren came to my house carrying an old black phone charger, a canvas tote bag, and a fear she was trying very hard to hide. She parked 2 blocks away. When I asked why, she looked toward the front window before answering. "I told Derek I was going to the pharmacy," she said. "I didn't want him seeing my car here." I nodded and stepped aside to let her in. That was the first time I understood how deeply his control had reached into her life. My daughter was afraid to visit her own mother. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I had once helped Lauren study for her nursing assistant certification, where Noah had painted handprint turkeys where Thomas used to read the Sunday paper with his glasses slipping down his nose. Now it held an old phone between us. Lauren plugged it in. For several minutes, nothing happened. The screen stayed black. Then it flickered weakly, showing a cracked wallpaper photo of Noah at the zoo when he was only 4. Lauren stared at it. "I forgot this was on here," she said. Her voice shook. I reached across the table and rested my hand over hers. "We only need to look at what you're ready to look at." She nodded, then unlocked it. At first there was nothing unusual. Old pictures, shopping lists, messages from her coworkers, a few screenshots of coupons. Then Lauren opened Derek's old text thread. Her fingers froze. There were dozens of messages. Some were ordinary, complaints about work, notes about picking up Noah, reminders to buy milk. But as we scrolled farther back, the tone changed. There were messages with someone named Kyle, a man I vaguely remembered from one of Derek's golf pictures. The messages were dated almost a year earlier. Lauren read silently at first. Then she whispered, "Oh my God." I leaned closer. One message from Derek said, "I've got her thinking she needs help. Older people panic when you mention scams and memory stuff." Another said, "Lauren won't question it if I make it sound like I'm doing it for Noah." My chest tightened. Lauren covered her mouth. Then we found another. "Once I get the papers signed, the house issue gets easier. She has no clue how much it's worth now." The room went completely still. I had expected Derek to be manipulative. I had expected him to pressure and lie. But seeing it in his own words was different. There was no concern in those messages, no family, no worry about me, only calculation. Lauren began to cry quietly. "I defended him," she whispered. "I kept defending him." "You didn't know all of this," I said. But I knew enough to ask questions. I could not deny that. Still, I did not want shame to swallow her whole. "People like Derek make questions feel dangerous," I told her. "They teach you that peace means staying silent." She wiped her eyes and kept scrolling. Then we found the message that changed everything. It was a conversation about the personal loan. Derek had written to Kyle used Lauren's info. "She barely looks at anything. I'll cover it once I get Sheryl's accounts sorted." Lauren stared at the screen for so long, I thought she had stopped breathing. "I never signed that," she said. "I know. He used my name. I know." Her face collapsed. This was no longer about a husband being dishonest with money. This was a man using his wife's identity, his mother-in-law's savings, and a child's future as pieces on a board. Lauren pushed the phone away from her as though it had burned her. "I can't go back there," she whispered. I looked at her carefully. "Then you don't have to go back alone." She looked up. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we call David. We make a plan. We protect you before Derek realizes you know." For a long moment, Lauren did not answer. Then she nodded. "Yes," she said. "Okay." David made room for us that evening. He listened as Lauren explained what she had found. He reviewed the messages, took copies, and asked her questions in a steady, respectful voice. Had Derek ever asked to use her Social Security number? Yes. Had he ever taken mail addressed to her? Yes. Had he ever controlled access to her bank account? Yes. Had he ever pressured her not to speak to family about money? Yes. Each answer seemed to drain a little more color from Lauren's face. David did not rush her. He explained that she could protect her credit change passwords, secure her identity, and seek legal advice about the loan and any financial misconduct. He also told her she did not need to confront Derek immediately. "We need to think about safety," he said. "Financial control often becomes more intense when the person loses access." Lauren looked down at her hands. "He'll know something is wrong." Maybe David said, "But we can make sure he doesn't control the next step." By the time we left David's office, the sun had gone down. The air outside was cold enough to sting my cheeks. Lauren stood beside me on the sidewalk holding her tote bag against her coat. "I feel stupid," she said. "You are not stupid. I let him do this. You trusted someone you loved. That isn't stupidity." She looked toward the street. "What if Noah hates me for breaking up our family?" The question broke my heart. Noah will not remember this as the time his mother ruined something I said. One day he may remember that his mother chose safety. Lauren started crying again, but this time she did not hide it. We stood there under the weak yellow light from the pharmacy sign, two women who had spent too long trying to keep someone else comfortable. The next morning, Lauren went home and acted normal. That was the hardest part for me. I knew she was walking back into the apartment with Derek. I knew she would have to sit beside him at dinner, answer his questions, and pretend she had not seen the messages that proved he had been planning to use us. But we had agreed it was necessary. We needed more evidence, and Derek was still confident, too confident. He believed Lauren was still on his side. That evening she sent me a message. "He thinks you're finally going to agree to sell the house." My heart began to pound. A few minutes later, another message came. "He already contacted a realtor again, says he has an appointment set for next week." I stared at my phone. The realtor. Megan Foster. Derek was not waiting anymore. He was moving toward the house. The next day, David called Megan with my permission. She agreed to speak with us. She came to his office looking uncomfortable, holding a leather folder against her chest. "I didn't realize there was a problem," she said as soon as she sat down. "You were told Derek could speak for me?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "He said you were considering downsizing and that he was helping you manage the process." "Did he ever show you legal authorization?" "No," Megan admitted. "He said the paperwork was being finalized." David asked whether Derek had requested a market valuation. Megan nodded. He asked for a preliminary estimate and mentioned that the family hoped to move quickly. "And did he say why?" She hesitated. "He said you were becoming forgetful and that Lauren needed to make decisions before things got worse." I felt cold. There it was again, the same story, the same lie. Derek had been telling strangers I was losing my mind so that when he tried to take control, people would think it was reasonable. Megan looked horrified when she realized what she had walked into. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I should have spoken with you directly. You were given a false story," I told her. "That is not your fault." But I could see that she felt ashamed anyway. David asked whether she would be willing to provide a written statement about what Derek had told her. Megan nodded immediately. "Yes, of course." That statement became another piece of the puzzle. By the end of the week, we had more than suspicion. We had text messages. We had the loan. We had the bank documents. We had the realtor's statement. We had Derek's own words about making me look incapable. And we had Lauren. Not as someone caught between two sides anymore, but as someone who had finally stepped out of his shadow. On Sunday evening, Lauren called me. Her voice was low. "He wants to meet at your house tomorrow." My stomach tightened. "Why?" "He says he's bringing Megan. He says it's time to talk about selling." I closed my eyes. The moment had arrived. Derek believed he was coming to my home to pressure me. He did not know David would be there. He did not know Lauren had seen the messages. He did not know Megan had already told us everything. And he did not know that I had spent months being quiet, not because I was helpless, but because I was waiting for the truth to become impossible for him to deny. The morning Derek came to my house, I woke before my alarm. For a few seconds, I did not remember why my heart was racing. Then I saw the pale light coming through the bedroom curtains, and everything returned at once. Derek was coming. He believed he was bringing a realtor to convince me to sell my home. He believed Lauren would sit beside him and quietly support every word. He believed I would be frightened, confused, and alone. He was wrong about all three. I got dressed slowly. I chose a dark green blouse, black pants, and the small gold watch Thomas had given me on our 25th anniversary. I had not worn it in months. The clasp was a little loose, and I was always afraid of losing it. But that morning, I wanted something of his with me. Not because I needed permission to be strong, because I wanted to remember who I had been before Derek spent months trying to make me feel small. At 10 minutes before 11, David Brooks arrived. He parked 2 houses down so Derek would not see him from the street. When I opened the door, he was carrying a slim leather folder and wearing a gray suit that made him look more serious than usual. "Are you ready?" he asked. I looked past him at the maple tree in my front yard. Its branches had started to show tiny signs of green. "No," I said honestly. Then I took a breath. "But I'm here." David nodded. "That is enough." We sat in the living room while we waited. The room looked almost exactly the same as it had years earlier. The same cream-colored sofa. The same framed photograph of Thomas and me at Niagara Falls. The same knitted throw folded over the armchair. but it did not feel the same. Everything I loved about that room had become part of what Derek wanted to take. At 11:03, I heard a truck pull into my driveway. I looked through the window. Derek's dark blue pickup rolled to a stop near the curb. Lauren sat in the passenger seat. Megan Foster was in the back seat. For one brief moment, I felt sorry for Megan. She had probably spent the weekend wondering whether she had done something wrong. She had not asked to be part of a family betrayal. She had simply trusted the wrong man. Derek stepped out first. He looked confident. He wore a navy jacket, dark jeans, and that same polished smile he used whenever he wanted to appear reasonable. He walked up the porch steps as though he owned them. Lauren came behind him. She looked nervous, but when our eyes met through the front window, she gave me the smallest nod. It was enough. Megan followed last, carrying a folder. I opened the door. "Good morning," Derek said brightly. "Mom." "Derek." Then he looked past me and saw David. His smile tightened. "Oh," he said. "I didn't realize we were having company." "This is David Brooks," I said. "My attorney." For the first time that morning, Derek looked uncertain. Only for a second. Then he recovered. "Of course," he said. "That's fine. We're all just here to have a family conversation." David stepped forward slightly. "Then this should be straightforward." Derek did not answer. We moved into the living room. I sat in my usual chair. David sat beside me on the sofa. Lauren sat across from us, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Derek sat next to her too close. His knee angled toward hers as though he could keep her in place simply by occupying the same space. Megan sat at the end of the couch with her folder resting on her knees. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then Derek leaned forward. "Sheryl," he began, "we all care about you. That's why we're here." I almost smiled. Of course he started with that. "This house is a lot for one person," he continued. "The upkeep, the taxes, the stairs. We've talked about this." "No," I said. "You've talked about this." His eyes flickered. "Fine," he said. "I've raised concerns, reasonable concerns. You told a realtor I was becoming forgetful." Megan shifted in her seat. Derek turned toward her quickly. "I said Sheryl had been under stress." "No," Megan said quietly. All eyes turned to her. She swallowed. "You said Mrs. Sandberg was having memory issues and that Lauren needed to make decisions before things got worse." Derek's face changed. "That's not what I meant." "But it is what you said," Megan replied. He looked at Lauren. "Lauren, you know what I meant." For a moment I saw the old pattern in action. He did not defend himself with facts. He tried to pull her into defending him. Lauren stared down at her hands. Then she looked up. "I know exactly what you meant," she said. The room went still. Derek's jaw tightened. "Lauren." "No," she said louder now. "You told me Mom was confused. You told me she couldn't manage money. You told me she was hiding things because she was paranoid." He leaned closer to her. "Not here." "Yes," Lauren said. "Here." I felt my breath catch. This was the moment I had feared and hoped for. My daughter was no longer whispering. Derek's voice hardened. "You don't understand what you're doing. I understand more than I ever did before." David opened his folder. "Mr. Mitchell," he said, "we have some questions about your involvement in Mrs. Sandberg's financial affairs and your communications with third parties." Derek leaned back. "I've done nothing wrong." David placed a printed screenshot on the coffee table. It was Derek's message to Kyle. "Once I get the paper signed, the house issue gets easier." Derek stared at it. His expression did not collapse dramatically. He was too practiced for that. Instead, his face went blank. Then he laughed once. "You're taking that out of context." David placed another message beside it. "I've got her thinking she needs help. Older people panic when you mention scams and memory stuff." Lauren's breath shook. Derek looked at her. "You went through my phone. I found the old one," she said. "That's private." Lauren stared at him in disbelief. "You opened my mail. You used my name for a loan. You took my passwords, and now you're talking about privacy." The words came out sharp enough to cut through the room. Derek stood up. "Lauren, stop. You don't know what you're saying." David's tone remained calm. "Sit down, Mr. Mitchell." Derek looked at him. For a second I thought he might refuse. Then he sat. Megan looked terrified now. I almost wished she could leave, but she had agreed to be there. She knew the truth mattered. David placed another document on the table. "This is the lender notice in Lauren Mitchell's name," he said. "Would you like to explain why a personal loan was opened using her information?" Derek glanced at the paper and immediately looked away. That was for the family. Lauren's face went pale. "You told me it was a billing mistake. I was going to fix it. With my name, I was trying to keep us afloat." "By lying to me." His voice rose. "You think you would have understood. You panic over every little thing." The moment the words left his mouth, I saw Lauren flinch, not because she believed him, because she had heard it so many times before. But this time she did not shrink. "You said the same thing about my mother," she said. "You say women are too emotional whenever we ask questions you don't want to answer." Derek looked at me. There was anger in his eyes now, real anger, not the polished concern he had shown for months. "You turned her against me," he said. I felt strangely calm. "No," I said. "You did that yourself." He stood again. "This is ridiculous." "We came here to talk about the house." "No," I replied. "You came here to pressure me into giving up my home." His face twisted. "You can't prove that." David slid Megan's written statement across the table. "She can." Megan's hands trembled as she spoke. "You told me you had authority to make decisions for Mrs. Sandberg. You said the paperwork was almost complete. You asked me to prepare an estimate because you wanted to move quickly." Derek stared at her. She continued more firmly now. "I would not have proceeded if I had known Mrs. Sandberg had not authorized you." For the first time, Derek looked cornered. He looked around the room as if he were searching for someone to rescue him. Lauren did not. Megan did not. David did not. And I certainly did not. He turned to me. "Sheryl," he said, lowering his voice, "you know I never wanted to hurt you." That almost made me laugh, not because it was funny, because it was the final lie. "You cut up my credit cards in front of my grandson," I said. "You opened my mail. You tried to make my daughter believe I was losing my mind. You tried to use her name to borrow money. And you told strangers you had the right to sell my house." He looked down. For the first time, he had no immediate answer. Lauren stood up. Her voice shook, but it was clear. "I want you to leave." Derek looked at her. "What, I want you to leave?" "Lauren, don't do this." "I already did it," she said. "I talked to David. I changed my passwords. I froze my credit. I know what you did." His face hardened. "You're making a huge mistake." "No," she said. "I made a huge mistake when I kept believing you over my mother." The room went silent. Derek grabbed his keys from the table. For a moment, he looked at Noah's framed school picture on my mantel. Then he looked at Lauren again. "You're going to regret this." David stood. "That sounds like a threat, Mr. Mitchell." Derek's eyes flashed toward him. "I didn't threaten anyone." "Then leave." Derek looked at me one last time. I expected rage. I expected some final insult. Instead, he looked almost confused, as though he could not understand how the woman he had dismissed for months had become the person who ended his plan. Then he walked out. The front door closed behind him. The sound echoed through the house. For several seconds, no one moved. Then Lauren began to cry. Not softly, not carefully. She cried like someone who had been holding her breath for years and had finally been allowed to breathe. I stood and crossed the room. She fell into my arms. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry, Mom." I held her tightly. "I know," I whispered. Behind us, David quietly gathered the papers. Megan wiped her eyes, and through the living room window, I watched Derek's blue truck pull away from my home. For months, it had felt like he was driving closer and closer to taking everything. That day, for the first time, I watched him leave with nothing. For the first few minutes after Derek left, no one spoke. The house was quiet, except for Lauren crying against my shoulder. I held her the way I had held her when she was little and afraid of thunderstorms. Back then, I could turn on a lamp, pull up the blanket, and tell her the noise would pass. But this was not a storm outside the house. This was a storm that had lived inside her marriage for years. "I should have believed you," she whispered again. I stroked her hair slowly. "You were trying to believe the person you loved," I said. "That doesn't make you foolish. But I watched him hurt you." "Yes," I said softly. "You did." She pulled back and looked at me with red, swollen eyes. "I keep thinking about that night, about him cutting your cards. I knew it was wrong. I knew it the second he did it. But I froze. I understood that feeling more than she realized. For months, I had frozen too. I had frozen when Derek opened my mail. I had frozen when he lied about the truck. I had frozen when Lauren looked at me like I might be losing my mind. Fear does not always make people run. Sometimes it makes them stand still and hope the danger will move past them. You were scared, I told her. But you don't have to stay scared now. David cleared his throat gently from across the room. I know this is difficult, he said, but there are a few practical things we should take care of today. Lauren wiped her face and nodded. The next hours were not dramatic. There were no police lights outside my house, no shouting in the driveway, no miracle that made years of manipulation disappear in a single afternoon. There were phone calls, passwords, forms, careful decisions. David helped Lauren make a list of what had to happen first. She needed to change her email password, her banking password, and the password connected to her credit report. She needed to contact the lender about the loan in her name. She needed to remove Derek from any account where he had access. She also needed a safe place to stay. That part was easier than I expected. Come here, I told her. She looked up. To your house. Yes. Mom, I can't just move in. You and Noah can stay here as long as you need. Her eyes filled again. I don't want to become your burden. That sentence hurt me because it sounded too familiar. It sounded like something Derek had taught her to say. You are my daughter, I said, and Noah is my grandson. You are not a burden. By late afternoon, Lauren had gone back to the apartment with David's advice and a plan. Derek was not there. He had sent several messages, but she did not answer them. She packed clothes for herself and Noah, school supplies, Noah's favorite blanket, his inhaler, a few framed photos. She did not take everything, not yet. She told me later that walking through that apartment felt strange. Every room looked the same, but she could suddenly see all the ways Derek had made it feel smaller. The kitchen where he handled every bill, the bedroom where he kept the passwords on his phone, the mailbox where he took letters before she could read them, the living room where she had convinced herself that silence was peace. When she arrived at my house that evening with Noah, he ran inside carrying a dinosaur backpack and a stuffed blue whale. Grandma, he said, are we having a sleepover? I looked at Lauren. She swallowed hard. Yes, sweetheart, she said. For a little while. Noah smiled. Good. Grandma makes better pancakes. Lauren gave a small laugh through her tears. That laugh was one of the first signs that something inside her was beginning to return. The next few weeks were difficult. Derek did not simply disappear because Lauren told him to leave. He called, he texted. He sent long messages saying he was sorry, then angry messages saying she had betrayed him, then sad messages saying Noah needed his father. David warned Lauren not to argue. She saved everything. Derek tried to convince her that he had only made mistakes because he was stressed. He said the loan was meant to help the family. He said the real estate conversation was just a misunderstanding. He said he cut up my cards because he was worried about my spending. Every explanation had one thing in common. None of them included responsibility. He never said I was wrong. He only said, you made me do this. Lauren began to see the pattern clearly. One evening, she sat beside me at the kitchen table after Noah had gone to bed. Her laptop was open in front of her. She had been looking through old bank statements and emails with David's office. I can't believe how much I didn't know, she said. You knew what he allowed you to know. She shook her head. I should have fought harder. Maybe I said honestly. But you're fighting now. She looked at me. That matters? Yes, I said. It matters more than you think. I had to learn that lesson myself. For years I had thought strength meant seeing danger immediately. I thought a strong woman would never be fooled, never hesitate, never let someone manipulate her. But that was not true. Strength was not never being deceived. Strength was what you did after you finally saw the truth. Lauren worked with David to protect her finances. The loan investigation was not resolved overnight, but there was documentation showing that Derek had controlled the account and accessed information she did not fully understand. She also met with a counselor through a local women's resource center. At first, she did not want to go. I don't need therapy, she told me. I looked at her gently. Sometimes talking to someone is not because you're broken. It's because you've spent too long carrying something alone. She went, and slowly I saw changes in her. She began checking her own accounts. She started asking questions without apologizing first. She opened a new savings account in her own name. The day her first paycheck went into that account, she stood in my kitchen holding her phone and cried. "It's mine," she whispered. "Yes," I said. "It's really mine." "Yes," I repeated. I understood exactly what she meant, because I had felt the same thing the day Carol opened my private account. Not greed, not secrecy. Freedom. As for me, I made changes too. David helped me update my will and estate plan. I made sure every document was clear. I made sure no one could use vague concern or emotional pressure to take control of my home, my money, or my medical decisions. I kept my main house. I kept my independence. But I also learned that independence did not mean shutting everyone out. It meant knowing who had earned your trust. I named Lauren in my legal documents again, but only after we had long conversations about what that meant. She would not control my life. She would honor my wishes if I ever truly needed help. There was a difference, a real difference, and I wanted both of us to understand it. One Sunday morning, about 2 months after Derek left, I found Lauren standing in the backyard beneath Thomas's maple tree. The branches were full of green by then. Noah was chasing Bubbles near the porch, laughing so loudly that the neighbors could probably hear him. Lauren was holding a mug of coffee. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded. "I was just thinking about Dad." My throat tightened. "Your father would have loved seeing Noah out here." She smiled sadly. "I keep thinking about what he used to say. Which thing that no one gets to make you feel small unless you hand them the measuring tape." I laughed softly. "That sounds like him." Lauren looked at me. I handed Derek everything. My passwords, my confidence, my voice. I stepped closer. "And now," she looked toward Noah, "now I'm taking it back." I reached for her hand. "You don't have to do it all at once." She squeezed mine. "I know." That was the moment I realized our relationship had changed. Not returned to what it was before. Some things cannot return exactly as they were. Too much had happened. Too many words had been said. Too much trust had been damaged. But we were building something new, something more honest, something stronger. Later that evening, Lauren helped me make dinner while Noah sat at the counter telling us about a frog he had seen outside. The kitchen filled with the smell of garlic and butter. Music played softly from Lauren's phone. She laughed when I told her she was cutting the vegetables too large. For the first time in a long time, my house felt like home again. Not because everything was perfect, but because no one in it was afraid. And when I looked at the little lockbox hidden safely in the back of my closet, the one holding the information about my private account, I no longer saw it as a secret. I saw it as a reminder. No one has the right to take your choices from you. Not because they call it love, not because they say they are worried, not even because they are family. There is a difference between support and control. Support helps you stand on your own feet. Control makes you feel guilty for wanting to stand at all. Sheryl learned that being generous does not mean allowing others to misuse your kindness. Lauren learned that love should never require her to give up her voice, her financial independence, or her ability to ask questions. No matter your age, you deserve privacy, dignity, and the right to understand every decision involving your money, your home, and your future. Keeping a personal account, reading documents carefully, asking for legal advice, and setting boundaries are not selfish acts. They are acts of self-respect. Family should be a place where you feel safe, not a place where fear is disguised as concern. And sometimes the bravest thing a woman can say is not, "I forgive you." Sometimes it is no more. What would you have done if you were in Sheryl's place? Have you ever had to set a boundary with someone you loved? Share your thoughts in the comments and tell us where you are watching from and what time it is there. If this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and stay with us for more stories about courage, family, and finding your strength again.